BBC and Native New Yorker. We are at the Desert Island Disco with my guests today, Pet Shop Boys. We're just trying to work out in the studio the theme of your songs, Chris. 3 great tracks in a row here. But they definitely have something going on in common among them, don't they?
Well, they're all female vocals as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
There's a yearning quality, a lot of love and unrequited love and potential love.
There's definitely a sense of possibility.
Strings.
Yeah.
Strings, there's a sense of glamour.
I would say all of these things are present in your new record as well, interestingly.
Well,
yeah,
you.
They are. I think I agree. Strings, glamour, hopefulness.
We'll come back to that. Gene
Poignancy.
Khan, Was That All It Was? Jackie Moore and This Time Baby and Odyssey, Native New Yorker. 3 wonderful tracks at the Desert Island Disco, chosen by my guest today, Pet Shop Boys. And Neil, we're diving into your tunes next. I think you can see a little bit of what's coming up. If you had to categorise what the listeners are going to hear next in a word, could you?
Well, mine are quite varied, I think. The first one is from my favourite era of clubbing, which is early 80s New York.
So is this Danceteria, this first one, and where are we?
I think it's actually, we're in the the Roxy Roller Rink in Midtown New York.
Oh, wow.
Where on every Friday night, a young singer, she hasn't had a hit yet, does a show with her 2 backing dancers, and she's called Madonna.
Fantastic. We are off there to the Desert Island Disco. Neil's selection's coming up next.
On BBC iPlayer.
6 Music.
Desert Island Disco.
The sublime sound of Underworld, chosen by Neil. Pet Shop Boys with me. Neil Tennant, what a mix, these last 3, so diverse.
Well, I was trying to be diverse. I mean, I love Marvin Gaye, full stop, but that's such a gorgeous song. I like it when you can dance to a gorgeous song.
Yeah.
I think all of Chris's were gorgeous songs as well, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. No, they have been beautiful.
And this is like the dance record of the 90s, I think, for me, I think.
Did you remember where you heard it first?
In the film.
Oh, in Trainspotting.
In Trainspotting, I bought the soundtrack.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So
and it's also great, beautiful chord change.
It is. There is a real beauty in that. We were just talking about it. Underworld and Born Slippy, Marvin Gaye, I Want You, and Madonna's Borderline, chosen by Neil. Desert Island Disco from both Pet Shop Boys. Thank you so much. Big reaction to this. Lots of nice messages coming in. Simon in Norfolk says, great selection. I love the new album, Pet Shop Boys. Always the epitome cool. Thank you for 40 years of fabulous tunes. This is Sheila. She says, Jackie Moore, only my favourite dance track ever. And Brooke in Manchester says, Was That All It Was? My favourite Gene Khan song. Never thought I'd hear it on the radio. So 6 music listeners, very happy. And you'll be happy to hear that the Pet Shop Boys are staying with me. Their brand new album is out and we're going to dig into that after the news at just gone 9:30 on 6.
Shake for me, yeah. I want to be your best man.
Oh, what's it about, though? It's so lyrically opaque. Led Zeppelin, Whole Lot of Love on BBC 6 Music. A selection of Neil Tennant. And you chose that as a possible Desert Island Disco track. We thought we'd throw it in, Neil, because it takes you back to... Would this have been an early concert that you attended?
I think it was the second concert I ever went to. I was 15. It was January 1970, Newcastle City Hall, Led Zeppelin. That song, Whole Lot of Love, had just come out. I remember hearing Alan Freeman play on Radio 1 for the first time.
Freeman, yeah.
And the concert was great. Everyone, in those days, people sat. Most people were wearing, like me, army surplus greatcoats, and we all just nodded our heads with the sort of studious look on our faces. But it lost me, unfortunately, the concert, because John Bonham, the drummer, played a 40-minute drum solo.
Oh, wow, okay.
Which I guess is sort of amazing in a way, but I thought it was boring.
Yeah, 40 minutes is a good long while. But
it's longer than one of our concerts.
Such a great tune, though. Thank you very
it's
much
amazing,
for choosing that.
Yeah.
So, listen, nonetheless, your brand new album, it's your 15th, I think. It's out today. What's this moment like for you?
It's exciting. We were doing some stuff last night. I went to bed and I waited till 12:01 to see it come live on streaming services.
Oh, that's
just because it sort of really exists then.
Yeah,
it's a funny moment. You didn't used to get that moment.
Yes.
And then that day, and then I fell asleep and didn't wake up till 7:00. So that was quite good.
Well, thank you very much for waking up early for us. I mean, I was talking to you about my response to the record, and it does feel to me like it's got this sense of optimism that runs through it, and kind of different facets. Tell me a little bit about making it and where you were coming from when you started work, what you wanted to explore.
Well, we started writing it during the various lockdowns of, I guess, 4 years ago. And Chris persuaded me to start, or suggested to me that I started programming, which I'd never done before. So I got a keyboard and looked at a GarageBand tutorial on YouTube. And then we could exchange music, and I would add vocals to Chris's tracks, and I would send him lyrics and stuff like that. And although it was a very strange period, it was quite nice just being at home for months on end, which is unusual for us. The weather was really nice. It made you kind of look back on your life a bit and where you are.
There's that feeling in it. I mean, particularly in this record, I was wondering about that because, you get this sense of the meaning of music, why you need it. There's a sense of sort of looking for happiness, looking for hope and optimism. Yeah. And that makes sense if you were writing during the pandemic.
It sort of brought out a bit of philosophy, I think, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So with those, the beginnings of those songs, he went into the studio with James Ford. That seems like quite a kind of low-key vibe in his studio. Is it just like one of those home places? Obviously there's a lot of gear in it, but from what I've seen, it looks quite chilled.
It's in his home, but it's a fantastic studio. He's got it set up just how he needs it. He's got tons of keyboards, drum machines, weird stuff. He's got a drum kit that's sort of hidden behind the settee, which he pulls out every now and then. He can play the bass guitar. I mean, he's an incredible musician. Yeah, he's a great string arranger as well.
And that was important on this record, the string arrangements. That was part of James's contribution.
Yeah. I mean, we went with him. We went to work with him partly because we always liked the Last Shadow Puppets albums, which, of course, is heavily orchestrated sort of pop. And he writes the string arrangements with a friend of his. But when we're working in the studio, he would suddenly put on a little suggested string line on the keyboard. And he always chooses the most heartbreaking sort of counter melodies above the vocal melody. He's got a real genius for doing that, actually.
It was interesting listening back to your Desert Island Disco mix there, and particularly, Chris, your choices, actually, that sense of like yearning and that complicated emotional mix. It's always been present in your music too, that sort of happy, sad thing. And I think the strings are a big part of that. Is that always the music you've been drawn to?
Yeah, from very early on, we've always done sort of dance music, but with emotional chords on top and strings. That's been basically the DNA of a Pet Shop Boys song from the very beginning, really.
I wondered about this record as well, and about the title and the artwork, and whether there was, I might be reading too much into it, but a bit of a symmetry with Actually, because, Actually and Nonetheless, and actually you see it in the artwork. Those words are both, like these adverbs that you would bring in a sense of hearing an argument, but making your own case, maintaining your own position anyway, which seems very Pet Shop Boys to me.
Yeah, and also our first two albums were called Please and Pet Shop Boys Please, Pet Shop Boys Actually. So there were sort of things you could say, and the sort of particularly actually is a word we probably still use quite a lot. And Nonetheless is, I noticed since we called it Nonetheless, I always seem to say Nonetheless. So Nonetheless, we called it Nonetheless. And also, this is just a little defiance. Nonetheless, there's a new Pet Shop Boys album.
Exactly. You're kind of maintaining your own position, which is very Pet Shop Boys. You've always, And
it has a bit of poetry in the word as well. There's something slightly forlorn about the word nonetheless.
Yeah, it is. It's very beautiful. So I watched the new Imagine that you've been the subject of and absolutely loved it. Full of amazing insights, including, which was new information to me, that you almost were called Shampooch as a band, or could have been called Shampooch.
No, we were called West End, but the story is the pet shop that we were named after. In fact, Chris had some friends who worked in the pet shop, and they were called the Pet Shop Boys. Under the pet shop in Ealing, there was a poodle parlour called Shampooch. And we were joking that at least we didn't call ourselves Shampooch.
It was a narrow escape for all concerned.
Pet Shop Boys is bad enough, really. So, particularly when you're our age.
You were talking to us about, the new record and that sense of maybe a little bit of a sense of retrospective, of looking back, of taking stock. Tell me about this track that we're going to hear, because I think this is an interestingly reflective one, a new Bohemia we've chosen to play from the new album.
Yeah, well, this is a track Chris wrote and sent it to me, and it was called Avant Garde on his demo, and I think you called it that because it sounds a bit French, I think. And it was so beautiful and sort of nostalgic sounding. I'd had this idea that it's one thing in the digital age to find is a bohemia with kind of loose people doing creative things and sharing it with their friends, but the wider world doesn't know about it. And I was wishing we were part of a scene like that, because maybe in the 90s there was more of that going on. We were part of it. And so it's a sort of genuine sentiment, really.
It's a beautiful track. Pet Shop Boys, A New Bohemia from the new album, Nonetheless, which is out today. Those strings, though. I mean, you're quite right. A New Bohemia, Pet Shop Boys, who are with me in the studio from that new record. It's so beautiful. That track, I mean, I feel like that kind of goes, the sentiment of that quite well together with New London Boy as well, which I wanted to ask about, because that's so
New London Boy, again, Chris sent me the track, about this very beautiful track. You were writing very beautiful music, beautiful things.
Yeah, what were you thinking about in lockdown, Chris Lowe? What was going through your mind? You were obviously looking
What were you
back.
thinking? What were you thinking? Well, I remember the first lockdown because it was rather beautiful, wasn't it? The weather there were blue skies, there were no planes flying overhead. Everything smelt stronger. You were very aware of nature,
The natural world kind
and
of
the
stepped
natural
back
world.
in. Yeah.
And I don't know if that infused, but also you had nothing to do, so I thought, I'll go and write some music.
But it does seem to have this kind of retrospective quality to it, for sure. The new record.
Well, and then so he sent me this track, and I'd had this idea, which is actually based on David Bowie's 1960s song, The London Boys,
Yeah.
which is about Bowie's inspired by coming up from South London and becoming a mod and taking pills and all that stuff they used to do in those days. And it made me think of me coming down from Newcastle in 1973 and getting a flat in Tottenham with some friends, and it was the glam rock period. And we were, off the leash, basically. And we all dyed our hair because we loved David Bowie and Roxy Music. And and also I was trying to be a songwriter. I used to go and have auditions with song publishers. And also the sort of thing, sexuality, and you're wondering about all of that at the same time. And so it's quite a nerve-wracking time, but quite exciting at the same time, which actually I think when you're 18, that's what life is like.
It's all of that. It's that sense of possibility, isn't it? So beautiful. You say, I was talking about the Imagine, and one of the things I love in that documentary is, I think it's you, Neil, that says that you, right from the beginning, wanted to create a world of your own, and that was always what Pet Shop Boys have been about. This kind of overarching artwork, this idea, this project that you're working on together. But also one of the things that comes across so beautifully is the creative relationship between the two of you. The fact that you get on, you like each other, you happily disagree about things. And that's so rare. You're just able to kind of keep going. But I do think that is a really interesting and perhaps an unusual thing that's allowed you to continue to create this world, because you kind of can't do that from a position of being fractured and disagreeing between the two of you.
Actually, a lot of people say to us how unusual it is. I think we can't feel it as unusual because it's our usual life.
Yeah.
And also there's only the two of us, of course. But I know people say, a lot of people in bands or even other duos can't get on. And Simon and Garfunkel, for instance, I think that's public. And I always think it's a shame, really. I don't ever like when bands break up. I always think it's a shame, really. But we're lucky, and also we have this creative energy. It's fun, we write music anyway, and then maybe I'll pull it together. Like this, Chris remarked in one of the interviews we've done recently, which I was sort of thought was quite funny, that he didn't know we were making an album. And because I was making playlists, thinking what kind of songs we've got and how they could fit together. And of course, that we spoke about lockdown. Actually, that whole period lasted about 2 years as reality, 20 and 21. And out of that came this. But so yeah, we're very lucky we have this kind of creative energy between the two of us.
Yeah.
And also we don't really compete, so try to compete with other people. I think that's the thing about having
you're
your
doing
own
your
world.
own thing.
I mean, in some ways, the Pet Shop Boys is a sort of fantasy of what it would be like to be a successful pop duo.
Yeah, well, and then you've
That's a good
kind of created
job.
that. But the nice thing is that you might not be competing with other people, but you're very happy to collaborate with other people too. And
If they're right.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So this is the question, because that you've worked with everybody from Derek Jarman, Mark Farrow, S. Devlin, all sorts of amazing people over the years. How do you know if they're right? What are you looking for?
I guess it's some sort of shared sensibility. And also, you've got to be willing to give them a lot of power. So you've got to accept that you like their taste and their instincts, and then you can trust them.
Yeah.
And then they can sort of do what they like, really.
Can you give me an example of that where you've had to kind of say, oh no, okay, I'm
Well,
leaving this up to you and I'm doing it, I'm going with it.
I mean, an extreme example really was we worked with a designer called David Fielding in the early 90s. And we asked him to design costumes when our album Very was coming out. And we decided to do a different approach. And he came in with a model of Chris and I in orange jumpsuits wearing pointy hats. and you thought, okay. Yeah.
Just give me a minute.
And then we thought, well, let's do it. And we were making the videos then like digital cartoons, all against blue screen in those days. And you know what? It's something people really, really remember about us, is those pointy hats.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Well, on that note, you've got some live shows coming up in July, not just any old venues. That sold out run is going to be very, very excited. The Royal Opera House this summer. What can people expect from the shows? What can you tell us?
Well, we've played there before. We really enjoy. It's such a nice venue. And we'll be taking our current show there, and it's a great place to see it. It's got a huge stage as well, hasn't it?
Biggest stage in London, I think.
Yeah, it's bigger than the auditorium. When you're on the stage, you think, oh, the auditorium looks quite small compared to where backstage. And it's the full show. All the lights, video, the whole thing. But it's a very intimate setting and plush.
Love that.
And
Smoked salmon
I
sandwiches.
think you get the sandwiches if you want.
Bit posh.
Bit posh.
Bit posh, but then, a big pop show at the heart of it.
No, exactly.
Yes, please.
We are, but of course we're doing other gigs. We're playing in Belfast, for instance, Glasgow, Manchester. We're headlining the Isle of Wight Festival.
Oh, that's exciting.
And which we're looking forward to, because we're going to be staying on the Isle of Wight for a couple of days, which is quite nice. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the summer.
And how do you decide who you're going to work with in your band, who you're going to play with live as part of your crew?
We were really lucky because on the previous tour, we decided to get some new musicians, young musicians, and we auditioned 5 people in an hour, and 3 of them we got, and they're and one of them's gone off to work with Ed Sheeran actually, but 2 of them we still have, and one of them brought in a friend who plays keyboard. So it was a really, really, something we've learned is when it's easy, it's going to work.
Yeah.
With James Ford, we suggested him, and I predicted he wouldn't do it because he's so busy and he's quite a hot producer. He came round to our studio, and then it was apparent we were making the album with him. It was really, really easy. And you mentioned the album covers done by a really famous photographer called Tim Walker, who he approached us to work with us. And he said, yeah, I'm doing the album cover. And he came up with the idea with the lights going above our mouths. And so I think when it's easy, it sort of bodes well, really. And that was like that. And with these 3 musicians that work with us on the tour, they're fantastic people. And
is that the dynamic between the 2 of you? Has there always been an ease there?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. We sort of bicker a bit sometimes, but...
But that's the thing. That's what I loved about the Imagine, that you get the sense that you disagree, but you're perfectly happy to do so.
Yes. It's a sort of... Yeah, it's playful, I think.
Exactly. Guys, thank you so much for coming in to see us. I'm going to play one more track.
Here.
And this is In Deep. Chris, I think this is one of your choices, taking us back to 1982. Now,
we're back in your disco, aren't we?
Yeah,
here?
you must have heard this at the time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what year this was, but
82.
Me and Neil would have probably been out every single night during this period.
I interviewed him for Smash Hits.
Did you?
Did you?
On the phone.
What was he like then?
Very nice. Yeah. I mean, he was a studio guy, really, but it's a fantastic record.
Yeah.
I love the sound.
It's a floor filler.
It is, absolutely. Listen, thank you so much, Chris, Neil. Congratulations on the record.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Out today, and it's just beautiful. I wanted you to know also great Desert Island Disco selections this morning. Lots of love to you and best of luck with all your creative adventures, Matthew. Kirsty from Hull says, morning Lauren, great to hear Neil and Chris today, seeing the boys tonight at the Ryland Library and can he wait? That's it, Matthew and Kirsty. They're off to go and make sure they make the gig actually. Pamela in Dublin says, morning Lauren, slightly behind British Desert Island Disco because I wanted to get behind Desert Island Disco because I wanted to get a coffee and enjoy. What a moment to be alive that the Pet Shop Boys request Madonna and Borderline, one of my favourite tracks by my favourite duos. Andy in Wellingborough says, loving the PSBs, a major part of my teenage years. I'm 54 now and still love them. Thank you. Well, thank you so much.